Hi, my name is Nini, and you have just clicked on Suspicious Minds. This is the channel where I talk to you about true crime cases, whether it has been solved or unsolved, about strange disappearances, and then all of that just leads to generally creepy stuff. So if that is something that you are interested, please click on the subscribe button, choose your notifications, and that way you will never miss an upload. And also, it's completely free. So go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Before we continue with the case today, as always, I wanted to say that I will never glorify a criminal or criminal activities. I don't want to sensationalize these people. I'm merely doing this video for information purposes so that we can also recognize the signs and protect ourselves and our loved ones. The resources for the case are available online. They are court documents, newspaper articles, and I will only mention the names as given in the news articles or the court documents. And the case that we're going to look at today is especially tragic because it involves a very young child, a 14-year-old defenseless girl by the name of Snethemba Dlamini. The case of what was called an exorcism gone wrong. Snethemba Dlamini was born in 1998 and she lived with her mother and her grandmother, Nolunga Agnes Dlamini, in Chesterville, Durban. And some newspapers say it's 2 years, but sometimes later, Snethemba's mom gave birth to another baby girl, but it was with the birth of this baby that her mom had passed away. And Granny Agnes had taken both girls in and said that she will raise these two girls. Now, I can gather that Snethemba's father was involved with her and that he made also somewhere along the line a promise to come and collect her when he is stable and he is able to provide a better life for her. Now, obviously for Agnes it was very tragic to lose her daughter, but it was some sense of, would say, relief that she could have her two granddaughters with her. And they said that Agnes completely doted over these two girls. She loved them and they were the most pleasant children. They were just the kind of kids that you would want to have. Snethemba's father, Ntsikelelo Faku, had moved to Umlazi, which is in the northern part of KZN, and it is a township. So his promise of finding stability and coming to fetch Snethemba happened in the year 2012. He came to Agnes's house and said that he's ready to take her and that he's got a girlfriend, so he's got somebody who can take care of Snethemba, a mother figure. At that stage, Snethemba was 14 years old, and Agnes was very sad to let her go. She didn't want to do this. She said that please can she maybe finish her school with her. Unfortunately, because she didn't have legal guardianship over Snethemba, she had to give her back to her father to go and live with the father and his girlfriend in Umlazi. It is said that Snethemba was quite excited about this move. She wanted to be involved with her father. She wanted to get to know him better. She craved that family setup. And even though she also loved her grandmother and she was a sweet grandchild, she wanted to go with her father. Obviously, she would have to go to a new school. Remember, she's 14 years old. She's taken away from a neighborhood that she grew up in. She had to get to know new friends in in the neighborhood. Snethemba went to church with her grandmother, so obviously she would have to get a new church. So there was a lot of changes in this child's life. And this is very important if we look at the reasoning for things happening in future. Some of the signs were mistaken for completely evil things that were not supposed to be there. Snethemba was described as a bubbly, excited, extroverted little girl who loved her friends. She loved talking to people that she knew. She wouldn't talk to strangers just easily. But she was a happy, outgoing child, and she wanted to become a doctor one day. She had learned how to take care of her grandmother who had diabetes, and she would always help her, and her grandmother was so proud of her. She always thought that Snethemba is going to become a doctor. It wasn't long after the move to her father's house. Either they lived in the same house as the father's sister, or they were neighbors. But the father's one sister, Fundiswa Faku, noticed that Snethemba was becoming reclusive. I think it was 3 months that she was there. And then Auntie Fundiswa started saying that, oh, this child is becoming quiet, she's not playing outside, she doesn't have any friends, she's just not herself. The teachers at the school say she's quiet, she doesn't participate, and Aunt Fundiswa was getting worried. Now, I consider myself being a fairly normal person. Some people may not agree with that, but if something like this would happen to a child, she was bubbly, she was excited, she would play outside, she moves to a new neighborhood, new school, all of that, and suddenly she changes. I would think that maybe it's the changes of the school, the church, the neighborhood. Maybe someone is doing something to this child. Maybe we should try and investigate what's wrong with her. Talk to the child. Ask her why she's feeling like that. But no, this is not what happened in Snethemba's case. Now, being the role of the very worried aunt, Fundiswa enlisted the support of their other sister. Now, again, I don't know if they lived in the same house or just all in the same neighborhood, but the sister, Lindalwa Jalubane, was enlisted in a sinister plot that Aunt Fundiswa had come up with, that she had disguised as a spiritual cleansing of this child. Fundiswa spoke to Lindalwa, and she said to her that she's very troubled by the fact that Snethemba has become extremely withdrawn. I don't know how the aunt came up with this, but it's Aunt Fundiswa influenced Aunt Lindalwa to now believe that Snethemba was possessed by a demon. I don't know if they watched a movie or if this was told in their church, but they were now chosen to exorcise these demons from this 14-year-old tiny little girl who they removed from the safety of her grandmother's house. But not only is she possessed by a demon, in order to get that demon out of her, they have to get what Fundiswa called the code. Until today, nobody knows what this code is. And once they have that code out of the child, the demons will be gone. It seems from all the court documents that Fundiswa was definitely the instigator, and Aunt Lindalwa truly believed that Snethemba was possessed by a demon. Now, the case gets worse from here. Aunt Fundiswa decided on a date when Aunt Lindalwa's 2 children and another female, which was first not mentioned, would ambush Snethemba for a prayer meeting. Now, if I can explain this prayer meeting, it would be kind of like when you would have an intervention for someone. Poor Snethemba is now possessed by a demon. She doesn't have a choice. They are going to have a prayer meeting and get rid of this demon by getting the code from her. And people, if I say this is getting worse, I promise you this is getting really, really bad. At the time of the crime, the two children of the aunt Landalwa were underaged, so their names were not mentioned. They were mentioned later, and they were Nokubunga Jalubane and Minenhle Jalubane. And the other woman that was mentioned, and just remember that I'm talking about her because there's a twist in this as well, she was called Nhlanhla Mdletshe, but she was also underage at the time of this crime, which makes what I'm going to mention to you later even more interesting and shocking. Fundiswa's plan was to, on the 7th of March 2012, ambush Snethemba when she comes home from school. It was a Wednesday. It was this code thing influenced Landalwa and her kids to believe Fundiswa's claims, because they thought that how could she come up with something like this? It's a code. It's so weird. It can only be true. And that was a very strange fact in this case. When they were waiting for Snethemba to ambush her, that is what Fundiswa also stressed. She said, remember, we have to get the code. What Snethemba went through is so horrifying. It's not for sensitive viewers. It really is very graphic. On the day of the ambush, Snethemba walked home from school, and the moment when she walked into the house, she was attacked by her two aunts, her two cousins, and a young woman. Now, this girl was really tiny. If I say attacked, I mean that she was beaten with brooms, with mops. It was later on said in court documents and newspapers that when the brooms would break, they would take the ironing board, whatever there was, to beat this poor child senseless. Now, the beating didn't just go on for half an hour, 2 minutes. It went on for 3 days. This poor child must have thought, what have I done? Why am I being beaten? Because in South Africa, we still have a lot of parents, and I don't judge, a lot of South Africans still beat their children. But this child must have thought, this has never happened to me at my grandmother's house. Where's my father? The first beating stopped when Fundiswa said, no, now we must dance. Fundiswa, Landalwa, the two cousins, and the other lady were dancing around Snethemba in a circle. Now, this is so weird and sickening. That was late on Wednesday evening when they started dancing around her. So they were singing apparently worship songs for this demon now to come out. And this is the sickening part. Aunt Fundiswa told Snethemba to get undressed. Now this 14-year-old child, she does what they are telling her. She's tired, she's beaten, she's bruised, she's probably hungry, she's thirsty, and these women are chanting, they are making noises, she doesn't know what's going on, and they are calling on this demon to exit her body and get the code. When the aunt told her to get undressed, the aunt started fondling the child. Aunt Landalwa got so peed off that she physically assaulted Aunt Fundiswa. She slapped her and said, what are you doing? This is not what you said was going to happen. As the two aunts are now beating each other, Snethemba saw that this is her chance to get away, and she bolted out of the door into the night. Unfortunately, the two cousins realized that if Snethemba gets away, we're not going to get the demon out of her, and the demon is going to come back and probably do something to us. So the two cousins ran after her. They were a little bit older than her. They caught up with her and they brought her back to that house. Now remember, this child is still naked. She's lying on that floor, bleeding. By now, Landalwa and Fundiswa smacked each other and probably felt better. They just then started singing and chanting and beating and taking times. When Snethemba would start crying, they would just pray louder. They would sing louder. Nobody saw this child running out naked at night in the neighborhood, or two children chasing her, dragging her back in the house. She was shouting on the top of her lungs for people to help her, but nobody did that. So it was the Wednesday when the attack started, the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday. Now, I don't know where her dad was in this time, but there was no dad to save her. It was in the early morning hours between Friday and Saturday morning that Fundiswa was now getting beyond herself. She was losing it completely. It looked like she was possessed. Aunt Landalwa later said in court that we thought she was possessed. And she was going on about getting the code. Now this is where, if you are sensitive, don't listen further. Snethemba was lying on the floor in the living room. She couldn't stand anymore. She was bleeding. She was still naked. She hasn't eaten since Wednesday, probably morning. She hasn't had anything to drink. The others went about their days. They would drink, they would eat. The one would be a guard for Snethemba so that she doesn't run away again. But Snethemba didn't have anything to eat or drink. She was beaten. She was tortured for those days. As I said, we are on Friday evening, Saturday morning. Fundiswa sat on Snethemba's body with her back to Snethemba's face, and she had inserted her hand into Snethemba's body, and she called for the cousins to bring 2 kitchen knives. The cousins were very scared. They ran to the kitchen and they bought 2 knives. Now, first of all, Aunt Fundiswa, with her hand in the body, pulled out all Snethemba's intestines, and she started making knots from them. She would knot them and say, get the code, get the code, get the code, where's the code, until there was nothing left to knot, and Snethemba was bleeding profusely. I think the 2 girls, the 2 women, were in utter shock when they saw what Aunt Fundiswa had done. Snethemba wasn't moving anymore. And that is when Fundiswa said, each one of us are going to sit on a chair now and we are going to wait. Now, what did they wait for? They were waiting for, as Aunt Fundiswa told them, for Snethemba to stand up and be fine. Because according to Aunt Fundiswa, that is what God told her was going to happen. And the other woman, I don't know if they as much believed her or were scared for their lives. But my goodness, I don't have words. So they were waiting and waiting and waiting. And it was about 3 hours later that one of the cousins decided she is going to call the police. She ran to a neighbor's house because they didn't have a telephone. They didn't have a cell phone. She just called the police and she said somebody had died, and she had given them the address. To give you some background about Umlazi and KwaZulu-Natal in general, KwaZulu-Natal is a highly volatile political province where there's a lot of political unrest, and it has been in the past as well. It was so bad at a stage that police stations would rotate the complete police station so that the people will not get involved in the corruption and the crimes in the neighborhood. So for example, Umlazi was one of those towns, and the people who worked in KZN police stations are hardened policemen. They've seen people being set alive. They've seen horrible things. The Saturday morning when they were called to say that we have a dead person here, they probably expected a death during the night. Nothing prepared them for what they saw. They walked into this house that was supposed to be the stability that Snethemba's father had fetched her from her grandmother and taken her to. And when they walked into this house, in the middle of the living room was exactly when the door opens. Still, Fundiswa was sitting, the aunt was sitting there, the other woman was sitting there, and the 2 kids, they were standing next to the door. And in the middle of the floor was this tiny body with all her intestines on the floor, blood everywhere next to her as she was bleeding to death. Now, Fundiswa just said that I managed to get the code. But what Fundiswa managed to do was to disembowel this child alive. Why I mentioned the whole Umlazi background to you is that the policeman who walked in there testified in court that when he saw this scene in front of him, he went out of the house and he went down on his knees and he started crying. And he said that he has never felt that emotion in his life. He described it as a dreadful scene. The woman just said that they were aunts, they were related, they were trying to get the demon out of this child, but they managed to do it because they now have the code. And I think that police, they were just dumbstruck at what had happened in that house. The police immediately arrested Aunt Fundiswa, Aunt Landelwa, the two cousins, and the other woman. Now, initially, the two cousins and the other woman were underage, so they were not mentioned at that stage. But it took so long for them to go to trial that by the time that the trial got underway, their names were mentioned. But when they went to court the first time, all of them pled not guilty because they felt that they were doing God's work. Now, I have a personal relationship with God, and I know that this is not what God does. This was torture and this was murder. It was not the work of God. I can just imagine the immense pain that grandmother Agnes had when she had heard this news. She was distraught. She felt so guilty that she had allowed Snethemba to go with her father. And she said that if she had the smallest idea, the slightest inclination that this would happen, she would never let her go. She was in all the hearings, that includes the bail hearing, and just mentioning the bail hearing, it was so shocking. 500 Rand bail is a smack in the face of the relatives of that child and that child's memory. So all of them were released on bail of 500 Rand. And it was even said in this bail hearing that the one woman, that she was a very good person because she worked at the old age home as a caregiver. I don't know, very good people do those things to children. Now, the first shock was the horrific murder of Snethemba. The second shock was the 500 Rand bail. The third shock was this other woman that took part in this exorcism. She got married to none other than Snethemba's father in 2013. Ntsikelelo Faku didn't care that this woman was present and took part in the disembowelment and murder of his child. He married her while she was out on bail, and it was she that was described as this wonderful person, a good Samaritan. Those were the words that's in the court documents. Then in 2015, when everybody was the age of when their names can be named, this is now already 3 years later, these people were all living a wonderful normal life. And Snethemba's dead. Grandmother Agnes was in a million pieces. But as with most things in life, the truth always comes out. And in 2015, they were taken to court and all the details were then heard in an open court. Good news, Nantlantla, the stepmother of Snethemba, turned state witness. She said that she will plead guilty, but she will also testify against these women. And it sounds like she didn't know them that well, but well enough to take part in this horrific episode in all of their lives. The defense said that Aunt Fundiswa had suffered a mental episode, a psychotic break, or she was possessed. The demon made her do it. There was a whole thing about there's a demon in her, but the court said we're not going to go that way. We're going to get her assessed by a psychiatrist. She was assessed by Professor Dan Mkhize, and he said there's absolutely nothing wrong with this woman. She is 100% competent and has no mental illness. He also added that Fundiswa had shown throughout since 2012 until the court case no remorse for what she had done to her brother's daughter. He said that her own story is that the demon was in her and not the other way around. I would like to agree with that because she sounds more like she is a demon than having a demon in her. Professor Dan Mkhize said to the court that he had no reason to believe that Fundiswa at any time had suffered a psychotic break and that she had the capacity to stop the crime at any time and that she was the ringleader. He said that she 100% influenced these women and that she had a clear memory of what she had done. She remembered doing that horrible act that she retold and retold and retold. And he said that if that was somebody with a psychotic break or even possessed by something, they would not have had that clear recollection of what had happened. Dr. Gerard Labuschagne, a very well-known forensic criminologist in South Africa, testified that this crime is once again one of those pack mentality crimes. We saw it with the Clarksdorp attack on Ginny and Vesey. If those people were not together, they would never have done that. But because Fundiswa had motivated them and they would see, oh, she's doing it, maybe I should do it also. I'm so scared of her, I'm going to do what she does. So he said that this was definitely a pack mentality and that the other 4 people would never have killed if they did not meet Fundiswa. But that he also said, they said to him, I didn't want to be the one to stop this because I didn't want to be the one that stops God's work. What also came out in court is that the other 4 women were totally convinced that Snethemba will get up from that living room floor and be alive, because that is what Fundiswa had told them. And that is why they waited more or less 3 hours before calling the police. Now, that is just mind-boggling, because how do you not see what you are doing killed this child? The newspapers reported that the stepmother of Snethemba, Nonhlanhla Faku, now because she was married to the dad, had shown true remorse for being part of this killing. I don't know if that remorse was more because she's now married to the father and that she had to show remorse, but she had shown remorse. The fact that she did admit to being part of the killing crew, if I can put it that way, all the charges were dropped against her for testifying against the other women. So it was Fundiswa Faku, who was 33 at this stage, Lindelwa, the aunt, Jalubane, she was 42 years old. She was older than her sister, but she let her sister control her into doing this to her brother's daughter. It was the 2 cousins, Nokubonga Jalubane, she was 22 at the time of the court case, and Menenhle Jalubane, she was 19 at the time of the court case. And it is said that they didn't really show any remorse because they were still convinced that there was a demon and a code inside of Snethemba. In November of 2015, Judge Nkosi found all of them charged in the murder of Snethemba guilty. He said that he had doubt that Aunt Fundiswa had any supernatural intervention from God and that there was any supernatural force at play. He acknowledged that she was definitely the ringleader, but that the other 4 people could have stopped her. He said that he didn't see any remorse from the other 4 except Nonhlanhla, and that even if they claimed they wanted to help her, because they did say we wanted to help but we were scared, they said that they would only pray for her, but nobody physically stopped Fundiswa, and all of them physically took part in the beatings over this period. On the 22nd of January 2016, Judge Philip Nkosi laid down the sentences for these women. Fundiswa and Lindelwa got life in prison. Nokubunga and Menenhle was sentenced to 12 years in prison with a suspended of 5 years because they were minors at the time of the murder. For the rest of Snethemba's family, it was a very bittersweet moment because they were very happy that all the guilty parties were given the maximum penalty that they deserved. But they would never see Snethemba complete school, go to university, get her driver's license, get married, have children, see her little sister grow up. They would never have anything of that ever again. And her grandmother was visibly sad outside of the court, and she was holding a framed picture of Snethemba, and she had told reporters that Snethemba would have turned 18 years old that year. And that's so extremely sad to think that the reason for living for this grandmother was Snethemba and her little sister, and now half of that was taken away. She had so much hope and love for this child. At least finally justice was served to these women. As in all my other videos, I really try to think about that specific moment where somebody could have been suspicious and said, wait, this is not right. What we are doing is not going to work. When I look at everything that has happened, I think this whole thing could have stopped when Fundiswa told her sister that Snethemba was possessed by a demon. If she had stood up, because she was 9 years older than her sister, she could have said to her, "What are you thinking? This is a child, she's new here, she's new to the school. Give her some time, or let's take her to the church. Let's have them pray for her." And then it could have been stopped when the poor child ran naked into the neighborhood. It could have been stopped by the other three. Even a child could have stopped this thing. But unfortunately, terrible things happen to amazing people. I think that Snethemba's legacy for the rest of us could be that there's one less evil person, and that is Fundiswa. She's in jail and we are out here. Please let me know if you have any suggestions for cases to cover. I've received quite a number of very interesting suggestions and I will work through them. I'm thinking of maybe doing South African ghost stories. So please tell me, what do you think about that? I'm also going to do another mug competition very soon. Justin Chambly received his mug. He was very happy about it and he had sent us this picture to say that he had his first cup of coffee from his Suspicious Minds mug. So if you found this story compelling, please click on subscribe. Please share the channel. I really appreciate your support. The more support I get, it makes it more possible for me to do these videos for you. And I really appreciate each and every subscriber. I also appreciate all the comments you give me and just all the support in general. I want you to please remember, be safe, stay suspicious, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.